yourselves, patriots, because you're about to see a race-baiting college professor get absolutely stunned by Charlie Kirk. Guys, it's gonna be a fun video. I think you're gonna enjoy it. But first, real quick, please make sure you like our channel, share it around, and subscribe to resist the mainstream. Why subscribe? So we can bring more absolute stunning videos for you guys. That's why, of course, as always, I'm your host, Darian. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's get right into the video.
Like, how is America racist?
Yeah, all right. Are you familiar at all with the concept of structural racism?
Yeah, it's a myth.
No, it's not.
So tell me why it's true.
Okay, so
not outcomes. Tell me why it's true.
So the textbook that you hearken back to in the 1950s, right? I found one of those in Virginia. It was in publication from five. Yeah, and so when we think about like how do you design curriculum that's historically accurate that doesn't talk about oppression? That doesn't talk about one group being oppressed over the other, right? And so when you look at that Virginia textbook, I certainly don't argue that that's what we're looking at heading back towards. But my guess is if you were to try to write a curriculum that covers, slavery in the U.S. or the, Holocaust or whatever, and not, give the narrative that this group did this horrible thing to the other group, you're going to have to rely on some pretty...
But it wasn't groups, though. That's incorrect. Not every white person was a slave owner.
Yeah, well, that doesn't matter, though, because,
9 out of 13 states abolished slavery by the time of constitutional ratification.
I mean,
it's not like every white person was supportive. In fact, we had abolitionists at the time of the founding.
Exactly.
So why would you say one group?
Well, I mean, it's not. You don't have to have every white person.
No, in fact, the majority of white people found slavery to be reprehensible at the founding.
I don't know that if we would have polled segregation.
No, we did actually
in the 50s. We would have found that.
Let's start with slavery. 9 out of 13 states abolished slavery by the time of constitutional ratification.
Yeah. Then why did the South secede?
Well, they seceded post-cotton gin for economic reasons. We went to war over it, though.
To Charlie Kirk's great point just now about how it wasn't all a bunch of white people at Hull doing slavery, as the popular narrative goes, a maximum of only about 25 to 30% of Southerners owned slaves. In other words, the strong majority never owned slaves. They don't teach you that in public school. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I know I didn't teach it. And I think there's a very particular reason for that I won't get into right now.
Well, you guys, the South declared war because they expected Lincoln to ban slavery.
And he ended up doing it.
Well, not for a long time. You know why? Because he wanted the fight to be about national unity, which is a good way to, I think, come wrapping around, right? National unity. So like, the first few years of the Civil War, he did not expressly say this war is about ending slavery.
He got to it.
And he later got to that because the South was more passionate and the North needed
No, I know, but let's go. I mean, but you said something I want to focus on, though. One group's doing something to the other. Like, that's just not true, right? It would be a small group of white people that exploited incorrectly a group of black people.
I think the crowds that would show up for the lynchings, according to research that I've read, numbered in like 5,000. And they would mail. They would
why was slavery being abolished?
Pieces of like these people's bodies
I'm not supporting
that. Right?
That's a
but like that is not a small. That's not a small group of people. That's not an isolated event.
But, I mean, in certain states, it was widespread.
A massive systemic problem, right?
9 states abolished it. Thomas Jefferson wrote in the original draft of the Declaration to King George, admonishing him for bringing slavery. The first ever anti-slavery convention was in Philadelphia, chaired by Benjamin Franklin in 1775. Thomas Jefferson got rid of the importation of new slaves in 1807. Guess what? None of that stuff's taught in our schools right now.
Exactly. Now, I'm gonna make an admission here that I'm not proud of, but I personally had no idea about the anti-slavery efforts of Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, at least not to that specific of a degree, until Kirk shared that information just now. I did, of course, know, thankfully, that many of the founding fathers were opposed to slavery, and that was a real thing in history that was not taught. Was that taught to me in public school? No, of course it wasn't, but I did know that much. It really makes me yearn for a time where people who are involved in setting up our country's government, how it's gonna function, actually cared about it. Thomas Jefferson, for example, talk about, one of the most legendary presidents in American history. Now we've got Joe Biden. Who doesn't love Joe Biden? Good old Sleepy Joe. With our $34 trillion in debt and his horrendous economy, things are just going super well. Speaking of which, guys, I've actually recently decided to invest in some precious metals myself, specifically to hedge against inflation because it's just getting so out of control with this Joe Biden economy. Luckily, my partners over here at Goldco have me covered, and they can have you guys covered too if you're interested. It's great. You can invest tax-free. You can even take assets from your 401k and move them over to gold and silver. Why do this, you might ask? Real simple. Hedge against inflation, protect against Joe Biden's god-awful economy. We know it's a very important thing to do, And I'm doing it, and I recommend you guys do it too. And by the way, guys, make sure you hang tight here because we have another great Charlie Kirk clip coming right up.
Given the concerns you've expressed about censorship and interference with free speech, I wonder how you view the laws in Florida and other states that restrict what professors can teach about racism in the classroom. I mean, obviously you disagree with the doctrines you teach, but why, would you extend to them the same right to free speech that you advocate for everybody else?
No, I mean, it's a matter of curriculum, right? So I would ask a question, should we teach the flat earth theory in physics, right? Should we teach bloodletting in biology? Should we teach lobotomies in medical school? Or should we teach eugenics in ethics? No, there's some ideas that are so reprehensible and provably wrong, they shouldn't be in anywhere close to an academic environment. Now, a professor obviously has the freedom of speech to say what he or she wants individually, but from a curriculum standpoint, from what you're able to measure or test, to say that all of a sudden we're going to teach that race matters, that somehow that people are suffering from a pandemic of whiteness, as Coca-Cola would say, or just critical theory or critical race theory, no, that has no place in an educational environment, because in an educational environment, it's less about really the opinion of the teacher or the opinion of the student. It's the pursuit of the soul and the entire being of the student towards truth, goodness, and beauty. And so you must have a teleological destination for that. Yes, a follow-up.
Just one follow-up, which is, so you would say that the idea that there's systemic racism in this country is as off base as the idea that the earth is flat and as provably wrong as the idea that the earth is flat?
Yes. I mean, I would ask you, how are we systemically racist?
Well, I mean, we could have a long discussion about it, but I'm a journalist. I don't think it's a place for it, but possibly if you attended a class on it, you might get in a debate with the professor and see what their data shows and whether it's a matter of scholarly dispute. I mean, there's a lot of books on both sides, or whether it's as, I'm not aware of a lot of scholarly, well-accepted books that advocate that the earth is flat. So I would say this is a matter of scholarly debate.
There was till Galileo.
Oh yeah, I'm a journalist, so I can't really answer that, even though I totally just expressed an opinion just now. This guy's so fake. Does anyone buy into it? Just the typical leftist tactic of like shoot, duck, and cover, you know? First it's, oh yeah, systemic racism is so bad, why aren't you acknowledging it? Then Charlie basically crushes his argument on how stupid it is. Then it's, oh, well, I'm just a journalist, I'm not a professor, blah, 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 don't look at me. It's like, bro, you brought it up, you clearly made that premise there. Totally disingenuous, dishonest, and fake.
There was till Galileo came along.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. And yeah, just to close it, yes, I think advocating for black-only dormitories is a moral equivalent of bloodletting, lobotomies, and flat earth theory. I think it's evil, it's wrong, and has no place in American education.
Let's go. Let's go. Great finisher by Charlie. What's really funny about what this guy is saying is it's a totally false and fake narrative that Florida was banning people from teaching that racism ever existed or whatever, as he kind of obviously implied. The only thing the law said was that you can't put people up and down based on skin color. Look into that yourself if you're curious. That's the complete truth behind it. But this whole idea of painting white people as oppressors and blacks as victims, which is very common in critical race theory and exactly what Florida was seeking to ban, it's totally disgusting, dishonest, and wrong. Well, guys, that wraps up our video for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, please comment below. Let us know what you liked, what you want to see in the future, and we'll see you guys again soon. Thanks so much, and God bless.